Hey guys, here's something a friend just asked about. The larger scale alternative to ink washes. You know, the little ones you get in the bottles from the other hobby manufacturers. And I just happened to have filmed this and had some content ready to go. So I'd like to give you a quick run through demo. This is how the finished result looks. It's a decent way to block in the shading and leave highlights on larger sized figures, maybe some smaller miniatures and so on. Perhaps not quite right for competition level, but for a pilot like this that I'm going to hide way in the back of a dark cockpit and cover with a tinted canopy, I feel it's probably about right. Just to share it in full, and if you're interested in the paint steps, it's pretty simple. I prime this figure with our cans to give the very popular zenithal light source. It means it's lit from above. And it looks great. Grey all over, and then white shot down in the direction of our imagined light source. For the flight suit, I wanted to give the feeling of cloth, so I went with classic, flat, water-based acrylics. This time it was a combination of Vallejo game color, model color, and a couple of the AK paints. Seriously, there's no real reasons for the brand choices at all. It's just the colors that I seem to randomly collect. Does your collection grow like this too? Rather than the usual drab colors, I was feeling like something a little brighter for a space safety suit and chose this electric blue color. I'm really happy with it, and it should stand out nicely against the dark cockpit background. Main thing to do here is keep it nice and neat, so saves us time on our next steps. Next on to the ink wash. I've repurchased a couple of my favorite colors in this brand and range, Daler Rowney. Sadly, I had to leave them behind with our move from Japan, and I'm honestly so happy to be reunited with them. Inks are more highly pigmented than paints, yet much thinner, and many colors are semi-transparent. They sometimes also use the words semi-opaque, but from what I can see, it means about the same thing. I write a great deal more about them in my book Sci-Fi FAQ, and also have a section on my website all about paint for you. That's paintonplastic.com, and yes, I'll include a link for that article in the description for you. To make this a wash that will stay in the recesses more, I've added a medium, matte medium in this case. This gives the ink a little more body and is much easier to work with and has the bonus advantage of matting down the shininess of inks. Here I am mixing just a couple of drops of sepia ink with matte medium to make a pretty good general use wash. The other color I might suggest for general use would be raw umber for a warmer, browner tone. This is the best part, as the application of the ink wash is really fast and easy. Once you have your mix to the right consistency, and it's pretty simple, you can just large brush it on and let the ink do the work. It will hold in place and dry down and matte itself in a most satisfying way. Give it a couple of hours or so to dry and see how you like it. Now, there are a couple of pros and cons to the ink wash. Let me explain them for you. The pros are obviously that it's fast, relatively cheap, and quite low stress. Yes, you could also do units, multiple figures, whole armies of miniatures like this, or just the large parts and figures for scale models like I'm doing here. The con downside is pretty obvious in that the shading effect will be pretty even, say uniform, over the model. In fact, that's why the first step with zenithal lighting for the primer is useful to help mitigate that flatness of the finish. If it really bothers you, and yeah, it bothered me a little too, you can always go back and lighten up some of the shading and the highlights as well. Yes, it adds a little more time, but it's still faster and easier than doing the full highlights and shading routine for this kind of model and task. I really hope this is a useful tip for you and your hobby time, or at least a timely reminder for this classic technique. This is probably a nice moment to mention that this camel model is going to be one of the featured kits in the next release of the official MAK books, Volume 2. Check out the details for books on my website and how you can get them without paying for the dreaded shipping by joining up on our Patreon for this and other cool collector items and our private Discord as well. And thanks always, guys. I really appreciate you. Please mash the like and subscribe for more, and I'll be back with other stuff. Cool stuff. Thanks always. More soon.